about a week ago, actually just for juniors, and that is posted to their classroom, which is like a student account. You guys can't see that. But this evening session, if you've got any friends, family members, or neighbors who missed it, I'm going to record it and post it on the general school website, so it'll be open for everyone to see. Every once in a while, if you see me glancing off or clicking off, it's just because I'm admitting late people to the session. So for those of you who know that your students use the Google Suite, next year we're actually moving to Schoology, which is different, but the students have an FCPS Google account, and when I do these sessions with them, I can just put it on a calendar. They can log into the student classroom that they belong to for me, and then they can just join, and we don't have to do all of this emailing out the link and the code and admitting people one by one. So this is just a little more labor intensive, but I want to make sure I admit everyone who can join. So we'll get going. Like I said, I envision about 15 minutes of just general remarks. My name is Gardner Humphreys, and I do the GCM College and Career Center. So for those of you guys who haven't seen my physical room, which I'm dearly hoping to get back to someday, it's a wonderful setting. It's a nice big glass, classroom in the lobby of the school. So I get plenty of walk-in traffic, and it's kind of like a multi-purpose room for students. Obviously, they always come in there and ask college and career, job, volunteer, summer questions, and that kind of thing. But also they use it as a study area. They can eat lunch in there, do some homework after school. They can go in there during the flex period that we call Learn that we have in the morning. So like I said, I'm looking forward to getting back to that part of my job. And virtual is kind of fun. It's kind of new, kind of interesting. But, you know, it's not as inspiring as working one-on-one with your kids. So hopefully in some format we'll be doing that next. But let me tell you a little bit about what I wanted for tonight. You know, with the school being closed, we obviously don't have the ease of dropping by, asking a quick question. And some people have, you know, haven't communicated kind of weekly or even daily with a lot of the staff since we've been at home. We're a little harder to reach, obviously. So I wanted to kind of be able to answer questions that you might have at whatever grade level your students are, to kind of make up for that lack of contact or that distance, and to try to stay connected in the virtual environment. So what I want to do today is just kind of give you where students are at each, 9, 10, 11th grade at this point. And obviously, if you have a senior, feel free to ask about that as well. But kind of where students are usually at this time of year with their college or career prep, what things might be different this year given the school closure and all of the virtual learning, and what we know about, especially if you have a junior and they're getting ready to do some college apps or some career exploration next year, or maybe get a job. What do we know at this point that's changed that will help us plan for next year, and what are the things that we don't know, and when might we know them, or how do we make decisions when we don't have all the information, which is a big part of this. So I envision this running, so I'll just go through some things for about 15 minutes and then open it up to your questions, and I'll unmute the mics when everyone have a question. For questions, if you're thinking of something, you want to make sure I cover it, what I'll do for the Q&A period is just open up the chat window. You can type in your question in the chat window, and then I'll unmute your mic. And then, you can, if the answer is fine, that's fine. If you have a follow-up question, then we can talk, and then we'll move on to the next question. So where we are. So timeline-wise, obviously we're wrapping up the school year. The most kinds of things to do for college and career planning that you have to sort of intentionally do, other than keep going with your schoolwork and pursuing your interests, is for juniors at this point, because a junior right now would typically, if they were thinking of applying to a 4-year college or a 2-year college, which would most of our students go to Nova if they're looking at a 2-year college, you'd be thinking about which colleges might you apply to next year. Hopefully you'd be starting to test the waters and taking a look at some of the college applications to know what's coming up for your senior fall. Senior fall is a busy time, so rising seniors, they get pretty busy, and the college application is a little bit different than your usual assignment, so it's good to look at it before you hit kind of the grind of senior year. And we have various help, and we've done this for rising juniors already in the past few weeks, offering like college support if anyone wanted to do a draft or think about those things. But a junior right now typically working on their college list, or if they're applying to a certain type of job or they want to do some career prep, they're asking, what can I do, make sure experience I get, classes I take senior year that will help me get ready for that. They're finalizing or drafting their list of colleges that they want to check out and research. They may be going to visit some, and most schools right now aren't doing in-person tours, but you can do virtual tours and you can talk to college representatives right now virtually. So that shouldn't, this type of being home should not throw them off the sort of drafting or finalizing of their college plans. There will be some things we don't know about how college admissions will run at every single university next fall, but we do know that they will be taking applications. The deadlines won't be terribly different than normal. The pieces of the college application, maybe with the exception of the SAT and ACT at some schools, remain generally the same. So right now they will be able to kind of predict what work is coming and when it's coming. They'll also be able to start on however they want to this summer. So that would be one thing which I'd encourage especially juniors to do, is to stay on track with your planning. Don't let the uncertainty on the college side affect or create uncertainty on your side about where you would like to go. That doesn't mean that you won't need a plan A, B, or C, but obviously the more extensive a list you have, the more you prepare for any kind of uncertainty that you do have. So that's sort of where a junior is with their college thinking. With the SATs and ACTs, that's the kind of other part, other than letters of recommendation, that they might think of before they return to school in the fall. And the SAT and the ACT, the first date that you can take it in person now is in August. Some people have taken it already and some haven't. Some schools have decided to do away with the requirement for next year, and some have not. So that will still be part of the process for a lot of students. All colleges know tests aren't kind of equally offered everywhere, both because of testing centers being closed during certain months and students having different levels of access to get to a testing center, or concerns about health to get to a testing center. So even colleges that are requiring the SAT, I think you're going to provide more flexibility when it comes to test scores for next year. So working on the college list and your plan, the SAT and the ACT, finding out if they're required or if they're optional, and if they are, coming up with a plan so that you can still take it in time for the application. And then the last thing would be maybe thinking of a teacher and asking the teacher to write a letter of recommendation. And you can ask a teacher to do that right now before you leave the school. Many will appreciate the ask. They'll be able to plan ahead, but they'll probably ask you to remind them when you get back to school in the fall too. Some of them may be writing letters over the summer. That definitely happens. So it's a good idea to pick your one core academic teacher. Again, this is for rising seniors. And ask them if they'd be willing to write you a letter of recommendation right now. And there's information on my Google Classroom for the students on kind of the etiquette of doing this. And also you want to provide that teacher with some good ideas from the class or classes that you took with them. And you can give them some maybe specific points you'd like them to talk about, projects you'd like them to include, even a characteristic of yours that you think really shined in that class and you'd like them to cover. So that kind of guidance is on my Google Classroom, and look in the 11th grade section right now. And if, I'm going to write in the chat bar actually, if any of the students of yours haven't joined yet, I'm sure there are some that have, this is the join code for it. So they go to Google Classroom and they just put in this code and it will enter them in my Google Classroom. So that's the code for my Google Classroom right there. It's got a lot of help in that classroom as well. So if there's one takeaway, after tonight and you run into your child at home, you can say, have you joined the College and Career Center classroom? It's got a lot of good stuff in there for over the summer. It's got some good stuff about SAT, ACT prep. It's got virtual experiences you can still get in this environment, and new ones as well that are taking applications, things like internships and volunteering. And it's got just a lot of good general college search and application advice as well. In fact, just last week I posted a presentation called Winning College Applications, which comes from our Junior Focus Day. And that's our big kind of junior college career pageant that we do every year for juniors, where we have sessions on every kind of part of the process: college search, essay writing, SAT prep. We have someone from the military come in. So there's a lot of video presentations on that because we did it virtually this year. But if there's one presentation that they should really check out for the college application process, they go to my Google Classroom and look at this presentation called Winning College Apps. And that reminds me too, I'll post it on the General Marshall website. And right now I'm going to put up the URL for my page of the Marshall website so you can see what kind of presentations and material to put on there. And that's where also tonight's recording will be as well. So it is the GCM College and Career Center page, and here is the link to it. So it's got a couple sections. Some things will be in resources if it's like a handout or material. If it's a presentation, it'll be in the section called School Presentations right there. So generally, that's just where a junior is. Now, for 9th and 10th graders, there's less specific actionable items to worry about. 9th and 10th grader can certainly be checking out colleges. They can certainly be thinking of their college list, and the virtual tours are open to them, of course. But generally, you'd want to be thinking about mainly, your topics. Are you taking the classes that allow you to act on your interests? You challenging yourself at the right level? Are you pursuing things like volunteering or other classes or camps, virtual camps, if you're interested in that? And there is information on that in the Google Classroom as well, trying to find those types of things, like I said. So a 9th or 10th grader would really, not have to do these things like necessarily sign up for the SAT yet or have a finalized list of colleges. They certainly wouldn't be asking for a letter of recommendation or have to know what teacher to ask yet. But they'd be going out just trying to make sure that they're doing the best they can with the classes, challenging themselves fully, and pursuing the kind of other experiences which may lead them to know what they want to do in college, and which, of course, would inform which colleges or careers and jobs that they apply to. Usually for 10th graders, we're kind of getting ready for their junior year, so 10th graders maybe look a little more closely at something like a practice SAT, and I think we will be offering that next October in some type of format, but we'll have to wait and see if they large school-based practice SAT like we do every October, or if they change the date on it. So that one's a little bit up in the air, but we always have practice SATs and ACT exams for sophomores and freshmen if you want to take, but it's not a test I would do in 10th grade because it really is targeted at 11th graders, and just the results get less meaningful for a 9th grader. But if we get to winter next year and we can't have a large in-person SAT like we usually do, then there's definitely virtual options to take official practice tests and get some feedback for 10th graders who are trying to plan ahead for 11th grade and figure out how much time are they going to need to kind of work on it and when they might take it. Most juniors take the SAT or the ACT for the first time their junior winter, so they can leave enough months to take it 2 or 3 times, because the colleges put together your best scores on your different sections. So say your junior winter you do better on the math section, and then your senior fall you do better on the English section. They put those 2 sections together and they form what they call a super score, which can be very helpful to students' overall scores. So there's definitely virtual opportunities. And also you want some time to try out the ACT, because Fairfax County gives the practice SAT in school for free for all the juniors, but we don't do that for the ACT. And colleges are just as happy about the ACT score as they are about the SAT score. Depending on where you grew up, that might not have been true. Back in the day, it wasn't in the Northeast where I went to high school and applied to college. But now both are universal worldwide exams, and if you try a practice ACT and figure out you do better, you can really leave the SAT behind. They're both equally accepted and as impressive. So that's kind of where people are at each grade level. Right now, just some basic kind of developments that might impact especially rising seniors. So with the world of college admissions, like I said before, the pieces are generally the same, but a few things are changing. And, the kind of numbers about, how many students will get into where are very much in flux. And we see some change with that with our seniors this year. But next year, the big kind of set change that we know right now is a lot of schools are going test optional on the SAT or the ACT. And so I'm going to put up a link right now to a site right now where you can actually see what changes colleges have made to their admissions practices, including the SAT or the ACT requirements. And this is by a group. I'm going to put up 2, actually. The first is a group that's always existed, and it's called fairtest.org. And this is an ongoing list of colleges that don't require the SAT or the ACT at all, or colleges that are test optional. And test optional can mean that either, you can submit the test if you want to or you don't have to, or they put some kind of benchmark. They say, well, if you have a B or a B plus average, you don't need to use the scores. But if it's below that, or you don't have any college prep classes, you might need to. So every college is different in its requirements. But this fairtest.org site has a good kind of a list where you can search and see what the testing policy is for a college all the time, not just during COVID time, but all the time. The second link up there is this group called NACAC, which is sort of the National Association for College Admission Counseling, and that covers both sides of the desk. So I belong to it, and we get together and we have conferences and professional training, and it joins admissions counselors for colleges with high school staff, like our counselors are Marshall and myself, and so we can inform everyone and follow best practices on college admissions. And that site right there is where they have updates, college updates for COVID time. So that would really mostly apply right now if you were to look at it to current seniors, but you can get an idea of changes that are being made. So for an example, if one school, UVA, decided to extend their early action deadline from October 15th to November 1st. So it doesn't sound like a huge deal, but 2 weeks in your senior fall to a student who's trying to, get up to gear on their senior year can mean a lot. And that will be a pretty significant change for a lot of our seniors for next year and giving them some more time to apply to UVA. So that's one good thing to know about that. And there'll be other colleges that are doing similar things like that. They may be trying to tweak their early action or early decision deadlines to try to capture more students. I think what we saw this year is things were obviously very not dependable for colleges in how many students they should admit because they weren't really sure how many were going to come. And we've seen a lot of colleges go to their wait list more than they have or issue emails, begging for more applications. I have a fake account with Hofstra, and Hofstra just sent me an email begging me, to apply today, and they don't even know what kind of grades I have. So there's definitely still colleges out there who are, kind of trying to adjust to changing admissions numbers, which always makes them nervous. They don't like uncertainty when it comes to matriculation and yield. So that's something to keep an eye out for next year, which is deadline changes. One thing I'll say about that, if you're a parent of a rising senior, is, try to use rolling admissions and early action to your advantage. I think colleges are going to be a little more excited to get people admitted early next year just because they usually have a higher yield, and that means a higher percentage of students who are admitted earlier in their senior year tend to go to those schools, and they want more students to commit earlier because they don't want to be in a situation where they're looking at, next year during the winter and the spring that they haven't filled enough spots. So if you find colleges that you're interested in, they offer rolling admissions, which is when they simply open a window early senior year, and they don't have a set date, like, for example, January 15th, but they say, okay, the application is going to be open in November, and when you apply and you get all material in, usually they say 4 to 6 weeks after that, you'll get your admissions decision. And then you still, as a student and a parent, have until May 1st to decide whether or not you're going to attend. So it's not binding, and it's admission. And that's a little different than early action, which usually has a set date, but is also not binding. So the one that's binding is early decision, or ED, and Virginia Tech has an ED date, and if you apply by that date, it's usually something like November 1st or November 15th, and you get into that one school, then you're committing to go to that school, and you're also committing not to applying or going anywhere else, and you have to put down your deposit. And so that's an especially tough choice for families, I think, next year. If you're not sure how much of the year is going to be online classes or when they're going to be able to get on campus, you've got to decide how much it's worth your tuition or what school would be better in an online environment versus others. And so even if you look at a school and you figure out, I might have a slight advantage applying early decision there, you might want to think about all the aspects of that, especially the cost aspect, before you apply to a school early decision, simply because early decision schools, you won't have your financial aid package normally when you get the decision. So you're committing to go there no matter kind of what price they set for you. So that's just something to keep in mind. So that's a couple of factors admission-wise for rising seniors. We talked about the SAT and the ACT a little bit. We talked about changing of admissions dates, and that link up there will be useful right there. I will say on financial aid and affording college, they are expected to start the financial aid process at the same time next year. And right now I'm pasting in the chat bar a link to the Fafsa. And so especially next year, I think it'll be important if you've got a senior to turn in your financial aid form on the earlier side. They open it up on October 1st, and you can start sending it to colleges right after that. You don't have to wait until your student has applied to the college, so you don't need to be pulling your hair out. If they haven't submitted their application by January 15th, you send off your financial aid application. They receive it. They put a timestamp on it, which is very helpful because they package aid for people with the earlier timestamps first. And a lot of state aid is first come, first served. So you can turn in that financial aid called the Fafsa form. This is the official government one. It takes about 45 minutes to do. And the school will keep it. And when your student is admitted, they will match it to the application, and then they will send out your financial aid package after that. So that will be probably more important than ever to do on time, just because you'll probably want all the time you want to be able to compare offers and costs and figure out what your decision is. And the national deadline is normally May 1st, so that's usually when you have to commit to your college by if you're looking at a four-year college. A two-year college is a little bit later a deadline. Usually you can, it's good to decide whether or not you want to apply to NOVA, usually by the fall, or whether it might be in your plans, because we have a good program to help students called the Pathways, just to give them guidance on how to sign up for the right classes that would transfer well. But actually registering for NOVA, you don't have to really worry about that till your senior spring, unless you're in the Pathways program or you want to do it sooner, but they don't typically open up registration until the winter in any case. So that it'd be a little bit different for a community college, because they often are just looking for a high school graduate and proof that you completed. And then they give you placement tests to figure out what course you should take. So it's a little bit different of a process. Okay, so that kind of looks at admissions deadlines. Let me going down here. We talked about financial aid a little bit, and I'll also say we do help, and I help people do the FAFSA next year if this is your first child in college or the first time you've done it. You only have to do it as a senior, so if you're a parent of a 9th, 10th, or 11th grader, you wouldn't do it yet. Seniors also look for scholarships to help pay for college, and you can do that earlier than senior year if anyone wants to start over the summer. There are more scholarships available for rising seniors than there are other grades, but they're out there for all grades, and rising seniors, especially during the summer and throughout their senior year, should look for scholarships, and I help them do that all the time. So let me see here. All right, going down our list right here. Let me see other kind of general updates that I just want to go over before we move on to questions. I will say also that some colleges are considering adjusting tuition, for next year. James Madison just sent out a notice that they're looking at what price they're going to charge for next year and perhaps lowering it. Colleges right now are generally starting to make the decision about whether or not they're going to be online or in person in the fall, or some type of hybrid. So not everyone has made that decision yet, but those decisions are starting to roll out. One thing I'll say is if you've got a rising senior, it's a good time to start the Common App this summer. I mentioned it before, but it's a good time to create your account. Students can start looking at it over the summer. Probably 3/4 of their schools and most of the Virginia schools accept this Common One online application. They do tailor their own parts to it, but it's just one account that the student creates. And then you can actually start to see the deadlines and what kind of questions the colleges are going to ask. You can start drafting your essay and your activities list and inviting recommenders. And colleges won't see it until you actually submit it and send it to them and it's finalized. So they don't have to worry about colleges seeing a draft of their essay or anything like that. But if you want something positive to do over the summer, starting your Common App account and adding some of your colleges onto your dashboard so you can start checking them out, that's a very good thing to do over the summer and an easy way to make some progress. I mentioned the FAFSA. I will say, as you're starting to look at colleges and you want a couple of clearinghouse options for finding virtual college tours, I'm going to put some in the chat bar right now. We've got a couple things on there. So the first thing I posted is a good article about how to make the most out of a virtual tour. So, not just be sort of a passive watcher like you're watching an episode on YouTube, but what kind of questions to ask and what to look for. Virtual tours, even more than in-person tours, are packaged commercials, just to be blunt. And so you have to know kind of sometimes what questions to ask and what to look for. And that article right there by the School Counselor Association, it's also called ASCA.org. That's got some good tips in there about how to make it work for you. The next two links after that, College Weekly Live and uvisit.com, are clearinghouses for virtual tours. And there are also places where college representatives will sign up for like open office hours or do individual sessions questions talking about their college, and a lot of them will even schedule a one-on-one session with you too if you want to ask some preliminary questions. It's not a, so that's a good place to find that. And let me see here. I'm going to throw up kind of the last of the links, and then we'll get to your questions. Right here, in terms of college research, the next link up there is this thing called NACAC Fairs. So that's that National Association of College Admissions I mentioned earlier. We have a big fair every, usually it's in October or at the Fair Oaks Mall. And, you know, I doubt that will be in person next year, but they do virtual fairs through the same organization that helps organize that, and that's that nacacfairs.org link right there. A couple other links right after that if you want to take a look at, I mentioned community college right there. Nova announced that they're going to do a lot of their classes online except for ones that are really tough like dentistry, auto tech, and some of the science and engineering classes that require lab work and in-person work. So if you want to check out what kind of some of these online formats or a hybrid in-person online format would look like, you can click on that nvcc.edu link right there and check out Nova's option. Nova's becoming more popular than ever if people aren't sure that they want to spend a lot of money for their freshman or sophomore year. And it's also close to home, so it has some other advantages as well, and the credits generally transfer as well, too. The last couple of links on there, there's one called thechronicle.com. That's a good article that has announcements ongoing about what schools have decided to open up their campuses for in-person classes and which are doing online and which are doing some kind of hybrid about that. And it links to each announcement so you can see like, well, okay, if they're going to be in person, are they going to guarantee me housing? Or how are they going to handle large gatherings like the cafeteria and things like that? So that's that chronicle.com site right there. And the last one is just a repeat of my site right there. Okay, so that's kind of all of the set updates I had for you. Right now I'll move down to questions. Also, if you ever do want to, if you think you're going to go strictly online for the education and you want to pick a university that has a good reputation for online education even before this happened, you can let me know as well. I'll help you research. You know, for a few just in our backyard would be University of Maryland, George Washington University. There's quite a few around here that have good online campuses that were already up and running before they needed to. Okay, so I'm going to go back up and look at some of the questions we have, and I will attempt to unmute the mic of whoever answered it. If it takes too long, so I have to scroll down alphabetically, then I'll just answer it and move on. And if I didn't hit it completely, you can just hit me with a follow-up question in the chat bar. Okay, here we go. So first question, what should I do if my child, if a teacher that my child has, if my child asks that teacher for a letter of recommendation, is moving to another school next year? So that's a good question. That always happens every year. There's always a lot of moving. What you want to do is, you know, ask yourself, is this definitely my prime teacher? If it is, if it's definitely the one you want, then ask the teacher if they are willing to write you a letter, even if though they're moving schools. And, you know, it's always a little bit harder, I think, when teachers get absorbed in their new school to keep up with letter requests from their old school, but it definitely happens. But I would just have the student ask, say, hey, I know you're not going to be at Marshall next year, but are you going to be doing letters for Marshall students? Or, you know, would it be more practical for me to ask someone else? So just be kind of realistic when you ask and ask them that question. And if they say yes, that they'll do one for you, that's great. And then I would ask for a phone number and an email that's not their FCPS email. So ask for a personal email and ask for either work or home phone number, you know, that will not be their FCPS number. So you can offer any reminders or bug them for the letter if the Common App is showing that it hasn't been submitted, you know, a few days before the deadline. But yes, still definitely good to ask if that was the teacher that you had the best experience with. Okay, going down the questions next. And I think if I scroll down, we ended up with about 85 members, so I probably will be a little too hard for me to unmute everybody. So just ask me a follow-up question if you have it, but I'm going to keep working down the list, and hopefully we'll be able to get to all of them. Okay, the next question is the College Board the only one to offer the SAT testing? So yes, they're the only official SAT test organizer. They offer the tests at different testing sites all over the country and the world. So, wherever you take it could be in your backyard. It won't feel like the College Board is running it because they pay for local test administrators like teachers and counselors and a lot of people who work in your high school to do it. Sometimes it's offered at Marshall as a testing site. Sometimes it's not. So it'll be very specific whether or not, say come August when they're offering the first in-person test, it'll be very specific to a locality whether or not they're going to still have that or they cancel it or if they're going to offer it at all. So the best thing to do is go in there, figure out what your best months are to take it, sign up, and then have a backup plan too for when you might take it if that testing center ends up not opening. They are refunding the money if they cancel the testing center, and they won't charge you a change fee to change it to a new place. But, I think there's been a big rush to sign up for August, so I don't think there's anything wrong, especially if you're a rising junior, to not thinking about taking it next fall, but maybe take it a little bit later and reserve your spot for a month that's a little farther down the road that you have a better feeling will be open. But if you're a senior and you need to take it, you have some schools that are going to require it right now and you know that. Try to sign up for it a couple times. That way, if one of them is canceled, you have a backup option. Okay, going to the next question right there. If a college declares that the ACT is optional or the SAT, will they have an advantage? Will a student have an advantage if they do admit scores? So, a college will tell you that if they're making it optional, it would be unfair. It wouldn't be a level playing field if they made it too big an advantage. But, if you've got a very high SAT score or ACT score, it's going to stick out, and that's probably going to catch their eye. I think it'll depend on two things. One, whether or not the college has always valued that as part of their admissions process. And so and there's ways of finding this out, especially by looking at the admissions data in Naviance. That's in Blackboard and ParentSys, and so you all can see that too. If you log into your ParentSys accounts and go to Naviance on the dashboard, you can see the Marshall admissions history graphs, and it has SATs and GPAs on there. So if a school has relied on that heavily, even if they go test optional and you've got a good score, I think it will stick out to them. Now, I think they probably will not use it very much if they just sort of were looking for a range before and your test was kind of right in the middle or a little bit on the higher side. If it didn't tend to make much of a difference before, I don't think I think it will make less of a difference now. But of course, if they usually see a 600 and you're coming in there with a 750 and they've always valued scores, I think that probably will catch their eye. So that's it's kind of anyone's guess how this will turn out, and every college does it on a college-specific basis. But that's my guess for that one. Okay, let's see. Is it a disadvantage to do early admission in terms of potential financial aid? Yeah, and that's things like early decision when you're committing. So I touched on that a little bit. I think, yes, I think you have to make sure that if you're going to do early decision, that's the one where you commit to going to that one school if you're accepted. You have to say to yourself, if I get in, I will be able to afford it. And it doesn't matter if they offer me any aid or no aid at all, we'll still be able to realistically swing it. So that's a difficult proposition with the expense of college. Colleges do offer estimators on their sites. There's something called a net price calculator or an NPC. I'm going to put that in the chat bar right now. It's called an NPC. They're all required to have them by law, so you go to their financial aid web pages, and it doesn't ask for your name or anything, so the information is not personalized, but you can take about 10 minutes. You can fill out this little calculator, and that will take into account things like your family income and some of your assets, maybe even your child's grades or other activities and whether or not they would qualify for a certain scholarship. And a lot of them are fairly accurate. Not all of them are super accurate, so they always say you have to go through the financial aid process to really know how much it's going to cost you. But look for those net price calculators if you're thinking about your early decision, if you think there might be a difference in what the different schools can offer you. Okay, so here's another question. Is there a different deadline for the Fafsa for international applications, or does it not matter? So yes, there may be a different deadline for the FAFSA if you're categorized as an international student. So this would be a student who may be studying here on a visa or temporary visa, or is not a permanent resident or U.S. citizen. They may give you a different deadline for the FAFSA, or it may be normally the same. Most colleges have what they call a priority financial aid deadline, so they definitely want the FAFSA by that date. Now those can range anywhere from 1st to in January or even February. So you really do have to just make a list of all your colleges and see where their priority financial aid deadline is by. Some schools will have a separate application deadline for merit aid too. So merit aid would be the aid that's not based on need or your family income, but based on your academic achievements and other skills or qualifications you might have. And so some schools like George Mason, they if you want to apply for any of their merit scholarships, you have to apply by their November 1st deadline. And that's not the financial aid application. That's the actual student application to be admitted. So you just have to sort of make a list of all your schools to take advantage of that. Okay, just going down the questions. Is the SAT or ACT mandatory this year? No. A lot of schools are going test optional. Check out those 2 links that I put up there to see if your school is going. And I will say on these links, any of these links that I post that are kind of like clearinghouses like fairtest.org or even Naviance and College Board, if you want to know for sure, visit the college's own website, because a lot of those, they lag. They're not updated as regularly. So you want to make sure you check the college's own website with something that's very important, like a deadline or a dollar amount for tuition or something like that. Okay, next question. Is there any talk about in-person tours, or should we wait? We did the virtual tour, but thinking of driving through campus at least. So most colleges are open right now for drive-through traffic. You can tour it kind of, from your car. Some may even allow you to wander around and look. Other colleges are discouraging kind of foot traffic or just doing self-guided tours. So most colleges, it's probably too early for a self-guided tour where you're just kind of poking around with your kid, taking a look at the buildings, things like that. But most colleges are not prohibiting like vehicle traffic, so you could at least look at the layout of the campus and check out the surrounding community. And colleges are usually pretty good about that on their websites. If you go to their undergraduate admissions websites, they usually call it something like, visits and tours, and they'll have their current policy on there as well. Okay, going down the question list right here. Okay, do you think the 2020 freshmen entering college this year will be more likely to defer or other college students? And if they defer this coming year, how will that affect the acceptance of the 2021 students? So yes, I mean, I'm doing the senior survey right now where every senior tells us where they're going, what their plans are. And I can tell you there's a lot more undecideds than previous years for obviously some good reasons. So I think that will create space in a lot of college campuses that we haven't seen. And my only question is, will that be balanced by the need for social distancing next year? And I know a lot of colleges are not going to fill up dorms to capacity, and they're going to do things like convert quads to doubles. They're going to have to provide a lot more single rooms than normal for students with health conditions. So, I think generally it will open up more space at a lot of schools. And, for example, Virginia Tech's been taking a lot of Marshall students off the wait list this year, more than normal. Will that keep happening? Well, I'm not sure, but I think there's a good chance that if the virus continues, at any kind of significant pace and more people defer or more people are comfortable with online learning, it may open more space at schools. But we'll have to see. Schools are also going to be aggressive about trying to make up for lost income. I think they are. They're losing both student tuition right now, and they're also losing a good bit of fundraising. So I think they'll be trying to get, students where they can. Okay, so here's another question. If test scores are optional and you think it might be below, say, the median for that college or the range they'd like to see, should you submit it? And can schools still see that you've taken the test if you didn't submit it? So that's a good question. If you're kind of just right in their range, it depends. I would say if you're in the middle of their range, then I would submit it. It will just remove the question about how you do on that, and it certainly won't hurt you. That would be viewed as sort of a mild positive. If you're on the upper end of the range, then I would definitely submit it if they look at it. If you're on the lower end of the range, but not, say, super low, I would say don't submit it. If it's not something that's going to help you, then leave it off. Colleges will be looking more closely at other parts of the application, and most specifically, I think the biggest thing that they'll go to is the strength of schedule. So that's where, they look at your classes that you've been taking every year and your senior year as well. And are the classes challenging? Obviously, what kind of grades did you get? But then they'll have to hone in on other things like your essay and your activities and letters of recommendation. And those will all make a bigger part of the process now that test scores are going to be declining in a lot of places. Okay. And the last part of the question is no. If you choose not to submit the test, they won't know that you've taken it. And so that won't become sort of a disadvantage. They only see the scores that you choose to send them. Okay, let's see here. My daughter is rising senior, may consider taking a gap year. Will colleges be less willing to permit admitted students to defer enrollment than a normal year? So I think probably, if anything, they will be a little bit more likely to do it. I think most gap year policies were pretty liberal in the past. So this is an idea where you apply to a school and you get accepted, but then you request permission to take your first year off and do something else. And usually it has to be something structured, volunteering, getting a job, traveling for education purposes, something like that. And then the college saves you a spot when you come back the year later. So that's the best way to do a gap year if you're very serious about going to college when that year is done, because then you've got the college you want lined up and you know they've got a spot for you. So I think colleges will probably still be definitely willing to do that. If you're a student they want to admit and they want to save space for you, I think they will be more than happy to do that. Of course, we don't know for sure, but that's my guess. Okay. Can I recommend a particular SAT or ACT prep course? Well, specifically, we can't really do that since they're for-profit businesses. There certainly are a lot around Tyson's Corner. This is a very target-rich area for SAT prep companies. There is posted on my Google Classroom and also on my Marshall website that you all can see a list of local test prep providers. And those, a lot of them get good reviews. They have wildly different formats in terms of their prices, and most of them have lots of tiers. You can pay for one class a week. You could pay for unlimited classes. You could pay for a one-on-one tutor. You could do it online. So those are all different formats that they have. And I would say check out their offerings. Try to ask around if you've got neighbors or friends who have used different of them. We do have free SAT prep through our Marshall library. And this is also in my Google Classroom, and it's on my website, my page of the Marshall website for you all to see. The library website has these databases called the Gale databases, and they have a free self-paced prep program for both the SAT and the ACT, so students can study on their own, and it gives them assessments. It targets the lessons and the strategies for where they're the weakest in the different sections, and then they can take up to 3 full practice tests for each one of those, the SAT and the ACT. So tell your student, check out the Marshall Library. There's a section right on the Marshall Library called College and Career, and it's underneath there. And there's a lot of other good stuff in there, like a resume writer and some other different things, career assessments, things like that as well. We also usually get a free Kaplan online self-paced prep course that's really similar to this library course, but the coupon code expires 2 or 3 times a year, and I'm just getting a new one right now, so I'll post that in the Google Classroom when I get it. But it's very similar in format to the library one. Okay, let's see. The next one is about getting a refund for a canceled SAT, and they're not answering when you call and try to process it. So yeah, I'm sure they're pretty overwhelmed. I did see on their announcement that they are doing that if it was canceled. They are refunds. But what I would do is try maybe their chat help, and you may have to wait a while too if they're kind of overloaded. But I would keep calling the customer service line or using their chat help or their email, the customer service email, and maybe try all 3, unfortunately, and see if you get a response from one of them. It could take a little while to process, but it should go through. Okay, let's see. So here's a question about letters of recommendation. We had a counselor leave at Marshall, Mr. Peters, and his replacement is coming on board. Do you know if Mr. Peters is writing college recommendations or the new counselor will be next year? So that's a good question. That's always tough when a counselor moves because you formed a relationship with the person. We do have a new counselor right now helping out, and then there's a permanent replacement for next year as well. So what I would do would be to email the counselor that's filling in for him right now, Mr. Benoit, and his contact information is on the school website, and ask the question about letters. I'm not quite sure what Mr. Peters' policy is right there. He is a director of student services at another school, and so I doubt he would have time to do letters for his caseload, because the senior caseload of letter writing can be over 100. So it's a really high number, and in a director job, especially, it's hard to imagine. But I would ask the counselor filling in for Mr. Don Benoit about that and see what he says. There may be a way of getting information from him for the letter, if he doesn't write the letter. Okay, can I explain the pathway program at NOVA? Does it include UVA? So yes, sure. So this is a program we have for seniors, and it's where a NOVA advisor comes to Marshall and advises students about everything having to do with being a NOVA student, but particularly about taking the right classes and doing things like applying for financial aid and taking the placement exams, so that when you get to NOVA, if you want to turn a year or two at NOVA into a 4-year degree, it's much easier to do that. And it's called the Pathways because they have also these set agreements with Virginia public colleges, including UVA, about what if you take the right classes at NOVA, and that's usually your basic associate's degree. So that's your core subjects. Usually even the very competitive colleges like William & Mary, UVA, if you're getting a B, maybe a B plus average across those courses, if you get your 2-year degree at NOVA and your associates, you'll be guaranteed admission as a junior to that college, that 4-year college that you want to transfer to. But it also helps students who want to just start at NOVA and then finish and get either a certificate there in a career area or do a 2-year degree and then go to work, or if they're not sure they want to transfer. So that application usually comes out in October, and then it's due usually the beginning of November. So look out for that from your counselor or myself next year. And then students apply. We normally have, about 50 or 60 students who do that program. And it's very helpful for kind of navigating the tricky things about NOVA. And that's usually things like taking the placement exams or making sure you sign up for the early courses. It does have one advantage, and that if you do this program, you get early registration, which is very helpful for a real popular school like NOVA, because it's one of the largest community colleges, and a lot of the most popular classes and the most popular professors go early. So if you can get early registration, that can really help at NOVA as well. And plus, if you're going to do something on the side, like a part-time job or anything else, you'll want the classes during the times of day that you want them. And being part of the Pathways program helps especially with that. So look out for that next year. Okay, so going down, we talked about Pathways. Okay. Yep. So, here's a question about the Kaplan code. So yes. So right now the self-paced free SAT, ACT prep with Kaplan isn't working because the code expired. So I've asked them for a new one, but I haven't gotten it yet, and hopefully I'll get it soon. But I would say try that one in the library website as well. It's there. It never expires. The county pays for it, and it's a Peterson's product, the Peterson's Testing and Education Textbook Company. And it's very similar to the Kaplan one as well. But as soon as I get the Kaplan one, I'll make an announcement about it. I'll send out an email and also post it in the Google Classroom. Okay, let's see. We've got some chatting about the refunds right there. Can I describe what type of virtual internships might be available? So yes, so I just posted this morning an updated list of, we call these enrichment opportunities. And if you go to my page on the Marshall website and you look in the, this is going to be, there's 4 sections on the page. This one is the one called resources. So if you go to the one called just resources, it's in like the second sentence, and there'll be a link and a PDF will come up, and it's got about 4 or 5 pages of internships, volunteers, summer camps, leadership opportunities where you might serve on like a board or something like that. And so those are all very useful, and most of all of them are virtual right now because they're new and they're updated. I get a lot of them from the county that also post them in Naviance. So the students can always see an updated list of these in Naviance under enrichment programs, but I also post them to the Google Classroom regularly. And just because information is a little harder to get out, I put it on the website as well for you all to see. But there are a lot of, some of them cost money, like some of these like camps or science camps or things like that. Volunteering and interning, obviously still free. Now there are some that are virtual. I haven't gone into too much to tell you the truth and see how exactly the format would be different. But I have seen a pretty good selection of opportunities. So I would go there, check them out, see what they're like. I know some students have done some virtual volunteering as well, especially things like tutoring, helping nonprofits with different projects, social media, advertising, things like that for nonprofits. So I do know there are things going on, and there's some interesting stuff out there. But check out that list. If you're not finding what you're looking for, then send me an email, and I'll try to work with you a little more and find some news sources. One of the sources on there is Volunteer Fairfax, which is a local group that's a clearinghouse of local opportunities, and you can search that by kind of subject area, like say you're into whatever, medicine, STEM, journalism, what have you, and then you can also search by your address and where you live as well. Okay, so here's another question about IEP. For IEP students, can they choose the SAT testing center even if it shows no seat available? So if they don't have space at the testing center, if you were an IEP student and you got accommodations, you still would not be able to take it at that center. You still have to find one that had space because they also have to, well, depending on your accommodations, they might need an extra proctor as well. So you'd have to find an SAT testing center that could take you still and had space. But normally they use the same space availability process as students without IEPs. But what you'd have to do is first request your accommodations, and that's the thing that takes the time. So if you usually have testing accommodations for tests at Marshall and you think you would need them on the type of format of the SAT, which is the time test and multiple choice, then you have to start the College Board and look at the directions for requesting accommodations, and then email your counselor and ask about the steps to have the school help you submit your application for accommodations, which usually are things like extra time, something like 25% extra time, or some other accommodations occasionally. So contact your counselor to start that ball rolling. You usually have to do that several months before the test date to get them approved by the College Board. They require some documentation and support as well, so it can take a while to get them approved. Okay, going down the questions here are there any colleges that you recommend for engineering that have worked well for Marshall students? Sure. We should set up email me, or I can give you some more tailored ideas because you want to mix some other things in there, like maybe what part of the country or the cost of the school, or if there's other things that the student's looking for in terms of student life or other subjects. But this is a very rich area for engineering, just starting with the Virginia State schools, really well-known ones, of course, like UVA, Virginia Tech. Going down the list, there's a lot of ones that may be a little easier to get into, good for engineering as well, and that's places like James Madison and VCU have good reputations for that, also George Mason. Even colleges that accept a wider range of GPAs that are also strong for engineering would be like a Radford or an ODU. And then just regionally around here too, if you want to look out of state, even though they might have private tuition costs, you could look at places like University of Maryland. Of course, Johns Hopkins has a great reputation up in Baltimore, super tough to get into, but they're really good for that. University of Maryland, Baltimore County. There's a bunch regionally too, like North Carolina State, if you're willing to look a little bit south. NC State is not too tough to get into. There for admissions for engineering, there's like direct admit, where you're applying to a school of engineering within the college, and that's usually harder because it's a smaller school with a finite number of spots. And there's other ones which are open admit, like James Madison, for example, or NC State. Good for engineering, but you don't have to declare it and join it right away as a freshman. You can still pursue your classes, other options, and you declare your major at the end of sophomore year. So they're able to accept more students in their pre-engineering departments. But if you want more ideas, just shoot me an email, let me know. Okay, let's see. We're going down here looking at some more questions. Can you again describe how we set up a meeting? Sure, no problem. You can email me and we set up a time. Unfortunately, I'm not working too much longer before the summer break. My last day of work is on Monday. So if you wanted to meet, before next fall, we'd have to do it pretty soon. But I am back a week before school, and we could always meet then, either virtually. We'll see what the format is. But you can also just shoot me a quick question on my email. I'm just going to type the email right in here. That's it right there. I spelled it right and everything. Okay, so if you have any other questions, just chime in and let me know right there. I was hoping to do about an hour of this right now. I'm sorry we couldn't do the mics, but when we get a bigger group, it's a little bit harder to go through and unmute folks. Tell your students to just look out for announcements in the Google Classroom. Tell them to watch the session for juniors that we recorded last week. I'd say even if you have a sophomore or freshman, that wouldn't be a bad session to watch because it was like this format. The students got to ask questions. They'll know it's coming down the road. Won't get as nervous about it if they know it's coming. And just look for new material that we have through there. So, okay, if there are no more questions, thanks very much for joining. It's been a pleasure. I usually get this recording sent to me from Google Meet in a day, maybe 24, 48 hours, and then I'm going to post it to the Marshall website and also to the Google Classroom. So thanks very much for joining. I hope you're all well. And please don't be afraid to reach out for help. And also I'll say the counselors are working. I'm only working until a day after school ends, but the counselors are there about a week after. So you can contact them as well if you might need something. Talking about you there, Mr. Sawitsky. Thanks for joining. So that's about it for tonight. Thanks, everyone. And I hope you're all well, and we'll see you soon.